can still feel the burn of those stage lights along my cheekbones, a heat that had nothing to do with the halogen glare and everything to do with humiliation. It was 5 years ago, but some moments don't fade. The auditorium in Rome, one of those buildings that tries too hard to be modern, was half empty. A few plastic bottles rolled under chairs. The microphone had been sticky with someone else's hand sweat when I grabbed it. "My name is Alessandro Piatti," I said. Every syllable rehearsed in my apartment kitchen the night before. My hands shook, but nobody noticed. No one cared enough. I ran through the pitch, the problem, the solution. The very software I'd spent 2 years coding, refining, forked from a disk of digital hope on my battered laptop. SAS to automate and analyze small business workflows. Data-driven efficiency, language-agnostic UI, AI-powered insights. The words tumbled out, all my faith in each line. The investors, 6 men and 1 woman with steel gray hair and fossilized patience, stared at me like I presented a new brand of toothpaste. The last question came from a guy with cufflinks shaped like ancient Roman coins. He said, "But who are you? None of this is new in the US. Why would any sane person in Italy pay for this from you?" The room snickered. It was a subtle, ugly sound, magnified by 1,000. I swallowed and tried to answer, but he half shrugged. Already looking at his phone. 15 minutes later, I was outside, scraping the dried sleep from my eyes with ragged fingernails, feeling the gritty wind off Via della Conciliazione. My phone pinged with a text. My older brother, Marco. "How was it? They still hiring for pizza delivery?" I stood there on the marble steps, the city's heart beating around me, and let the grief settle somewhere deep, curling into my stomach. Then there was clarity, the kind that only shows up when you've crashed so hard there's nothing left but stone beneath you. Home waited for me, but not in the way anyone ever means home. My mother still lived in the Trastevere apartment where I grew up, the walls lined with old Polaroids, my father's soccer trophies, and prayer cards lined along the mantel. I'd left at 20 to study computer engineering. At the end, I returned with apathy for tradition and worse. Ambition without an outlet. That night, I did not sleep. I lay awake listening to the muted pulse of Rome outside my window. I stared at the cracked ceiling, tracing the memories stitched into its uneven surface. My father's boot print, once after a leaking pipe. The oil-stained handprint from the time I installed a new smoke detector. At breakfast, my mother set down weak coffee and a thin slice of panettone. My father squinted at me over his glasses, a silent verdict. "Will you look for real work now?" he asked, his eyes sliding away to the TV playing Rai News. Marco came by after his shift at the automotive shop. He barely said hello before tossing his jacket and collapsing onto the couch, the cushions hissing. My mother narrowed her gaze at him in silent rebuke. "Your startup crash and burn?" He mimed an explosion with his fingers. "It wasn't perfect," I admitted. His smirk split across his face. "You could always come apprentice." No shame in working for your hands. The old script played out. My father nodded at the mention of honest work. My mother hovered near, as if at any minute I might break, though her worry was twisted with something closer to pity. Everyone I cared about, everyone I trusted, had decided my dream was a joke. In their eyes, entrepreneurship was for Americans on Netflix, not for people like us. Whatever hope had pushed me onto that stage in the first place, it was now a raw, exposed nerve. In that grief, I saw everything sharp and urgent. The world wanted me to quit, to settle. But something inside me, maybe indignation, maybe stupidity, ignited. I realized if I waited for someone's green light, I'd stand still forever. What comes next for people like me, who refuse to become smaller just to fit in? We find a way around, even if it means crawling through the dirt. Over the next months, I worked out of the bedrooms of friends, borrowed Wi-Fi from bars and coffee shops. Marco's girlfriend Alice let me use the storage closet in her hair salon when she wasn't working. I spent days building the platform, cold calling small shops by morning, and coding till the blue light made my eyes ache by night. I applied for anything: grants, accelerators, hackathons. Most were silent rejections. My parents gave up asking how things were going. At dinner, headlines about economic crises and unemployment padded the silence. My father would gesture to my untouched dish. "Eat. You need your strength, even if you spend all day with your computer." One afternoon, as November clouds pressed low against the city, I visited a small stationery shop near Piazza Navona. The owner, a round woman named Mrs. Sorella, listened as I explained what my platform could do. "I can't hire anyone," she said, glancing at her hands, worn smooth by years of handling paper. "I'm not selling you labor," I told her. "I'm selling you hours back. More time for you, less lost invoices, less stress." She looked at the cracked paint on her cash register and nodded. "Try it 1 month. If I hate it, you disappear. If it helps—" She trailed off. She didn't need to finish. The first month she called 3 times a week for help, then only once a week. By month's end, she paid. The next month, she recommended me to the bakery next door, then to the tailor down the street. It wasn't Silicon Valley. It was survival by centimeters. Each small business brought small payments, but they stacked, a mosaic of belief. I poured every euro back into the software and sleepwalked through side jobs, fixing computer screens, waiting tables, until I'd built enough momentum to hire Gianni, an old university friend, as my first developer. One autumn night, years later, I sat at a small desk in an office that belonged to my company. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, I watched as dusk smeared violet over the domes and bell towers of the city. We had 500 businesses in our portfolio. I'd raised a tiny round from an angel investor, a former customer who'd once run the shoe store on Via del Governo Vecchio. I'd learned to ignore the old shame, most days, but it waited for me always, crouched in memory. Like the smell of burnt coffee clinging to shirts. And then fate twisted again. The local business association offered us a major partnership. If I could show their board proof of our impact, the concrete proof, as their president insisted, we'd land a contract that could double our revenue overnight. The meeting was set for March in a half-restored conference room near the Coliseum. My team wore pressed shirts. I wore the same battered shoes from my very first pitch, polished now, but still marked by the city streets. I looked at my reflection in the glass before entering, pinched my own cheek for luck. Inside, the table was ringed with skeptical faces. At the far end, flashing his familiar shark's grin, sat the coin cufflink investor from years ago. Next to him, stomach tighteningly close, was my father, oddly out of place, and Marco, arms crossed, curiosity and disbelief tangled on his face. The president nodded toward me. "You may begin, Signor Piatti." I hit the index key on my laptop. Number after number split the white screen. Data visualizations, real-time savings, graphs of client retention. And then Mrs. Sorella stepped forward. She'd volunteered to speak for us. "I haven't closed my shop once in 3 years for paperwork," she said, her Roman accent pronounced. "I know who owes me money and whose birthday is next week. This software is part of my life now. I'm not young, but this made me smarter." The bakery owner, dressed in his flower-streaked apron, offered similar praise, his hands clasped nervously. With Signor Piatti's help, I spend more time with my grandchildren. That's all I ever wanted." The room fell silent as the impact grew harder to deny. The president cleared his throat, eyes flickering between the board members. "Is there a demonstration?" the investor asked, tone oily. I connected the projector to a live dashboard. Data from all 500 clients, depersonalized and secure, filled the screen. Hours saved, earnings improved, overdue invoices reclaimed. Tangible, unmistakable. When I glanced over, I caught my father's eyes. For the first time,